July 2014, Seattle, at a sold-out Key Arena. There's a multi-million-dollar tournament going on that has a prize pool of $10.6 million, higher than the PGA Masters, Super Bowl, and Tour de France. Of this massive prize pool, the winning team receives $1 million per player. The tournament is for an online multiplayer competitive game, Dota 2. Chances are, you've probably never heard of it. Dota 2, known previously as Defense of the Ancients, is based off a modification of the game Warcraft 3, where you and 4 other teammates face off against an enemy team of 5 people. The goal is to destroy the other team's throne, or ancient, located at the enemy base on the opposite side of the map. David Parker, known as Gods Online, is a former professional player, now commentator and tournament organizer for Beyond the Summit. He has been around since before the beginning of the game.
Well, I remember when I first told my parents that the clear objective comes down to destroying your enemy's throne before yours dies. But they're like, well, why don't they just go start attacking the other throne and try to kill it? They're just explaining the development and the different phases throughout the game, the early to the mid to the late game. With Dota, there's a clear objective, but the way you go about that is very abstract and much more like a game of chess in a digital world that's hard for someone to understand. It's like if you sat someone down to watch a chess game and they'd never heard of chess or knew what chess was, they would not have a clue what was going on, how the game would develop. Even just knowing what pieces move, knowing that how a knight moves on the board, that to me is very reminiscent of Dota. It's like knowing what a character can do, what spells they have, is a big kind of obstacle as far as viewing the game and even playing the game. Warcraft 3's Dota tournaments, a big prize pool was something in the thousands. It could be like $1,000 to $2,000, and that was considered something big. Some of these events were just played for pride. It was much more about the prestige associated with being the best Dota team. Then as you look at more recent years, you've got these big $10 million prize pools, which is absolutely absurd when first place winners are getting $1 million per player. It defines the Dota scene as an esport. Like, it's all built around this one event.
David Parker isn't the only one that's knee-deep in the competitive scene. Greg, What Is Hip, Laird, a former commentator turned entrepreneur, helped to organize the Dota Pit tournament. With the success of his website, High Ground TV, he eats, drinks, and sleeps Dota 2.
The issue with TI is it sets a huge shadow over the rest of the scene. Like, teams all the time that basically form just to try to get invited to the international. Every single team, their goal is to play at the international because the prize pool is so big that you can place 3rd or 4th and 5th in every other tournament. But if you get to the international and get top 8, you've probably doubled your money at least for the year. Last year, top 8 at the international was $500,000 a team. Valve has, at least in the past, basically shown that they're not really interested in being that hands-on. They're very, very hands-off, at least up to this point. I don't know if that's going to change in the future. Valve basically just publishes a list and says, you guys are invited. And then a couple days later, they publish a list and say, you guys are in the qualifiers. The interesting thing about Valve is, the CSGO team is totally different than the Dota 2 team. The CSGO guys go to the LANs, they talk to the pro players in public, they tweet about it, etc. The Dota people, you never hear from them, like, ever. Really, all they do in the competitive scene, at least publicly facing, is hold the international, and then you don't really hear from Valve the other 10 months or whatever that it's not really happening. But the reasoning for that is when they had the international the first time around, it was just a way for them to show like the world what the game was, drive some hype around it. But people loved it, and then TI2 rolled around and it was pretty popular, and then TI3 rolled around and they made a ton of money, and they were like, well, maybe we should just keep having these. But beyond that, they're kind of just completely hands off, because inherently Dota is a really complicated game. There's over 100 heroes. I think there's as many items. You need to know what all of them do. Very, very small detail to be able to really function. And in terms of public popularity, even on the international, they've added in a stream dedicated to teaching people about Dota, the noob stream or the new player stream. That's, I think, gone a long way to help grow the player base, which, is rising pretty steadily. And I think it's really important for them to do this kind of stuff because, like I mentioned, Dota is so complicated. So the barrier to entry is just way too high for new players.
Luckily, you don't have a game that revolves around a $10 million tournament without acquiring a massive community to support it. Jake Canner, aka Sir Action Slacks, had his life changed by Dota 2 and now makes content for the community as a full-time job. Jake thinks that he is a way to help bring new people into this complicated game.
Video games can be such an easily accessible spectator sport. Counter-Strike Go, for example. Guy gets a gun, guy shoots another guy in the face, guy dies. I don't need a college degree to figure out that. I don't need to go on Wikipedia and look up 10 hours of hero spells and different kind of damage types. There you go, dude got shot with a bazooka. We're done. Dota 2, it's much different. It's much more complicated. It's much more difficult to get in, and it is also extremely rewarding if you get into it. The problem with that is that when you have something so daunting and complicated, to draw people in is almost impossible. So I've had an idea for a while. We approach the game as not, this is how you play the game, let me teach you the mechanics. And it's really kind of like a car talk, if you ever saw that show on NPR. Comedy is a pretty universal language, so I think that's the best way to do it. Basically, my goal as a Dota 2 content creator is to try to make Dota 2 a less stressful place. I find that we have a very angry community, but that's mostly because we get so invested in our games. It's a 50-minute game where you feel like you do a great job. There's 4 other people you have to count on, so people tend to get pretty upset. My content is geared towards making people laugh, enjoy the game, reminding them that it's a fun thing to do. That's kind of my goal. My favorite content is Stupid Voices because I think that's my funniest content. I like to do Gyrocopter. I think he's fun, and he's really easy to do. You just gotta make weird and excited noises halfway through, and then sound really sad when you screw up all the time. But that's it. See, I'm still laughing. The goal in life is to annoy 4 other people for 50 minutes, record it, and show it to thousands. So that's it. That's all I do. It takes a lot of self-discipline to be a content creator. There's a really nice bridge between the very serious competitive side of Dota 2, the money-making, the millions of dollars at stake, and then the smallest of the small guy that just joined last summer and he's just trying to learn about it and make a little talk show about it for his class project. I mean, there's just a great way for content creators to bridge the gap between very professional, very into this game, and just having fun casually playing it. I love waking up every day and streaming for 12 hours, making my own kind of TV show for people to watch and having fun and having a fan base. But does it work? Yes. Will it consume your life? Absolutely. Will you have dreams about content that you hope to make literally at night and wake up in a cold sweat? Sure. That's half the fun. It's kind of like getting addicted to drugs, but then the drugs pay you, which is great. I wake up every day. I think Dota 2. I stream for 12 hours. I make content for the other time. I go to bed. I wake up, and it's more Dota 2. That is my life right now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Love it.
Another content creator, Steve Toffees Pierce, was a varsity athlete that suffered a physical injury. He views Dota as his way of staying competitive.
I played soccer, track, volleyball. I played everything at the same time. When I was in my mid-20s, I completely destroyed my left knee. I've got, I think it's 16 titanium bolts holding my knee together right now. So going out and playing competitive sports is almost impossible. To go from that to not being able to do just about anything was a really tough transition. And I think that's why I started playing video games more aggressively. And then when I found the idea that like I can find 4 friends and we can just enter amateur tournaments and play as if it were us playing sports together, really appealed to a lot of the guys who live in different parts of the country. That's where I got hooked in. And then once I was hooked into the game, it was like, well, you just start consuming. And it's such a cool thing, the community in the esports world, that I just got stuck in it. So Dota kind of gave me that fix, if that makes sense.
But as far as watching this Goliath of a game as a viewer, then becoming a player or content creator, Jake Canner advises,
if you want to be a content creator, don't stop. Don't let anything slow you down. You could have the worst programs out there. You could have the stupidest idea that might be the best.
Thanks go out to David Gods Parker, Greg What Is Hip Laird, Jake Sir Action Slacks Canner, and Steve Toffees Pierce for their time. Special thanks to Valve for developing Dota 2 and Michigan State University for their equipment. For